Hello, my name is Scott. Welcome to UTAC. Today we're going to be working on this 2006 BMW 325i, and what we're going to do today is we're going to take the rotors off of it. They're warped. I feel like the brake pads are in pretty good shape. I checked them not too awful long ago, but what we'll do is we'll turn around and check them again just to make sure they're okay. But the rotors have warped, and I don't know why. What we're going to do is to try to investigate and see why they have warped. Because when you put the brakes on, the car shakes pretty violently going down the road. It's pretty uncomfortable. So we're going to look at this and see if we can figure out what's happened. So we'll start disassembling the car. So if you'll just stand by, we'll resume. Okay, we've got the car up in the air now, so we'll continue by removing the wheel on this side. We're just going to demonstrate this on one side. I'm doing both sides, but we'll demonstrate what we're going to be doing to this on just one side. So. The wheels on a BMW are actually not lug studs, they're lug bolts. If you'll notice, it's actually a bolt instead of a stud. So you have to be careful taking these off. Sometimes you can remove the last one and the wheel will actually fall off. In this case, the wheel's kind of stuck a little bit on the rim. So what I'm going to do is after I set these lug studs down, we'll see if we can give the tire a bump and it should just come right off. There we go. And it comes right off. We're on the ground. And now we'll begin. First thing we'll do is we'll take the caliper off. We'll take the caliper holding device around here off, and then we'll remove the rotor off the car. Looks like the brake pads are in pretty good shape. About 60 or 70% brake pads still left. So the pads are good, but what's happened is these rotors have warped the runouts off. Basically what that means is they're wobbling going down the road. You don't feel it when they're just rolling, but you feel it when you put the brakes on, because when you squeeze that rotor with the brake pad, what happens is it boom, 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 it hits that high spot every time it comes around. And then what happens is you get a shudder when you put brakes on, and it shakes the whole front end of the car violently. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get this rotor off. Again, we'll take this caliper housing. And on this case, this one has a little Allen screw right here. I'm gonna move the camera up here. Hopefully you won't see the shake and try to break that out. But I want you to see, if you'll look at the caliper, the rotor right here, there is a Allen right there. There's the Allen. This is the Allen wrench hole. So what we'll do is we'll take this Allen out, and then the rotor should come right off of the car. Okay, now we've got the tire off, and we've got the wheel turned to the left so that the caliper is out toward the front here, so we can get to it very easily. If you'll notice, I've got it turned. So what we'll do is we'll try to move the camera around behind this caliper so you can see the components we've got to take apart. I've got a light in here, so hopefully you can see this okay. Now, when I move this to the inside, you can see that on this caliper there is a little button right there, and there's nothing on it. You can't get to it. So what I have to do is take a little pocket screwdriver and just kind of gently pop this cover off. You'll notice that little cover right there. It's just a little rubber cover that goes over the fastener that holds the caliper on, and I'll pop it off, and there it is. This is the little fastener. You see I got it laid on top there. My finger holding it. That's it right there. I'm going to set it off to the side. Up in the hole here, you'll notice that there is an Allen wrench hole. We've already determined the size of this Allen wrench. It requires a 7mm Allen, so I'm going to use one on a socket just like this right here, hopefully to make it a little bit easier. It fits right in here in the hole. And I found that I can take an extension, because if you'll notice there's a little bar right here. This bar is actually the brake line. I'm sorry, the brake line goes down through here. It's kind of in the way of my ratchet. So what I've done, I've just put a little extension on my ratchet, and the ratchet goes in right here. And we will remove this now. Get it in the right direction. Get the ratchet turned in the right direction, and we'll break it loose, and we'll spin her out. Now what I've also found is I can kind of take that bolt is loose now. We've got another one on the bottom right here. So here's the top one right there, and the bottom one right here. This is on the back side of the caliper. We have to remove this cap as well. Same way. Just kind of pop it off there, and we'll loosen this bolt. Okay, I think that's got it. Now, come up around here to the front side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small pry bar. I'm going to gently pry on this caliper just a little bit to get a little space between the caliper and the brake pad. I don't normally recommend doing this, but I'm going to do it just a little bit, give me just a little bit of space so that the caliper will come right on off. And I'm gonna have to set the camera down because I've got to pop these little tabs right here off. I'm gonna show you how to do that with another shot, so stand by just a moment. Okay, in this shot we're gonna take this bracket right here off. Bracket has to be kind of popped out of its holder, like so. That gets it off the caliper so that it's actually holding the caliper in place and keeping it on there. So we're going to take it off to get us some room to work here. A little bit tight. It's not turning myself off there very easily. So just turn right out of there. There we go. Just had to pop it out. It has to be pushed in and it actually holds the caliper in place. It's a little spring-loaded component here that actually holds the caliper in place. We removed it. Now the caliper should come right off. Now, if you'll notice, it's not wanting to, but it's probably because these bolts that I just loosened, you actually have to kind of pull them out of the hole a little bit. Back them up just a hair, and that gets us a little more clearance here. There we go, them both backed out now. The caliper comes right off here. If you'll notice, the back pad is staying with the caliper. It's actually held on with a little keeper on the back. You see the keeper on the back of the brake pad. And as you can see, the brake pads are still pretty thick. They look pretty good. We're gonna probably use these back because they're in pretty good shape still. I just replaced these not too awful long ago, but for some reason we've got a rotor that's warped. Now, one thing they recommend, and I'm going to do this too, they don't want you to hang this caliper down by the hose, because the hose can actually get stretched and can rip the inside of it, and what will happen is you'll end up with a blockage inside, and the brake pads, the brake fluid won't flow forward and backwards so that the brake pad will release and apply. I demonstrate this in one of my videos on brakes. Basically, we're going to set it up on top so that there's no pressure on the hose. Now, I'm going to go ahead and remove this outer pad. It's just kind of laying on there. Pretty simple, and you can see that that brake pad's pretty thick as well, so it's almost new. So we're going to use it back as well. I'm going to lay it over here out of the way. And now we should be ready to remove the rotor. Now we've got to take an Allen wrench here and fit this hole right here to remove this. So the next step will be to remove this rotor. Okay, now we're ready to remove the rotor. In this case, we had to change to a 6mm Allen wrench to remove this. I don't know why they didn't stay with a 7mm, so you could use a 7mm for the whole job. That would have been smart, but I don't know. These engineers think that it's, I don't know. I don't know why they do this. It'd make the mechanic's job a lot easier if we had the same size sockets, but basically, but a 6mm goes right in there, and that's what we're going to do is we're going to move this little screw right here, and I'm going to just kind of give it a quick bump. There it goes. It come right loose pretty easy. Okay, what I did is I tried to move us a little bit closer here so you can see this. I'm going to remove this Allen screw right here with this Allen wrench. I've already loosened it, and we're going to take it out. So I screw right out of here. And there's the little Allen bolt. We'll take it off here. You see it's got a little Allen hole in the end of it. We'll be sure and put this back to hold the rotor on when we get through. Okay, before we remove the rotor, we've got to remove this other piece that holds the caliper on, because you can see it wraps around the rotor and is holding the rotor on. So we've got to remove it, and it's held on with a couple of bolts on the back side. Okay, now you'll notice that this is the upper bolt, and this is the lower one right here on the back side of the caliper. They're actually 18mm head bolts, so you use an 18mm socket and ratchet to take them off, and we'll go ahead and do that now. I've already got my 18mm rigged up on my ratchet, so I'm going to give you a little secret here. I actually broke these loose before the video with an impact because they're extremely tight, but now you see that they're not all that tight with me. Just remember they've got to be extremely tight, okay? I'm taking both of them loose very carefully. It's not hard to do. As you can see, they come right on out real easy by hand. And you can see that there's a washer made on it, and that's where the bolt went right there. 18mm head bolt. And there's another one at the bottom of here. When I take it out, the problem we got is this piece on the front side. I'm moving the camera around. It's going to want to fall off, so I'm going to position it so that you can see what happens here. And I go take this other one. I'm going to hold this part right here and go ahead and loosen this back one on off, because when I do, see, everything wants to fall off. So I'm going to go ahead and get this back bolt out on this side. Here's the back bolt. Just got it out. I'll put it on the out of the way, and then we just slide this gently out of the way. You see where it's held on. There's threads on it. That's wraps around the rotor and is held on the spindle. Now the rotor is ready to come off. Just slide the rotor off the car gently, and there you go. And we're ready to take it down and have it turned on a brake lay. So we'll do that next. But I wanted to show you, before I finish the video here, how this actually goes on here. You can see that it actually sits right there, and the bolts go in from the back side and hold it on, but see, it's actually between where the rotor is, so you can't get the rotor off. But that's the little holder for the bracket for holding the caliper itself. So, okay, one thing I failed to show you on the BMW, because the wheel that we took apart was the right side. It doesn't have this option on it, that side. It's only on one wheel on the front and one on the back. If you'll notice, there's a wire running right here out of the car and all the way down and into the caliper and into the center of this caliper. You can't see it. Let me get the light so you can see it. You can see that wire runs into the center right there. And what that wire does is it's a brake indicator to let you know when the brake pads are worn out. And it's just gently held in there very carefully, and we'll move it out of the way before we start taking this side of the car apart. But it actually just pulls out of the center here, and what we'll do here is we'll take a small pair of these grabber pliers here. Here they are. They're just a little pair of grabber pliers, and we'll grab the center of this piece and we'll wiggle it a little and pull, and it should pull right out of there. And there it is. It pulls out. And if you'll notice, hopefully I can show you this. I'm going to try to get my light up here so you can see the way this is made. It has a, so I get my light where you can see. And I can't hold my light and do this at the same time. I'm sorry. See if I can do this a little better so you can see this. Okay, now maybe you can see this. You can see that it's just a little rubbing block, and the way it goes in there, that piece right there where you see that little shiny look, see that little, that's kind of shiny right there. My thumb's in the way right there. That actually wires down along with the brake pad right there, and then that wires down to here, and up in there there's a piece of metal. And that piece of metal, when it touches the rotor, it grounds this wire that goes up through here and sends a signal to the dash to tell the dash to turn a light on to let you know your brake pads are due for a change. And I think what it does, I may be wrong about this, but I'm thinking that it has two stages. I think it wires to a certain point and you get a yellow light letting you know that it's time to check your brakes. And then if you go too far, you get a red light telling you, hey, you better put them on right now. So I'll investigate that to make sure I'm right about that, but I believe that's the way it works. But anyway, that's the brake system, the brake indicator wire. And by the way, this wires out, so you have to take it loose all the way over here to over inside, and it's in a connector. If you'll follow it around here and see, it goes around here and into that box right there. And inside that box there's a connector. You open that up and you unplug it, and then you replace this wire. You can buy these at a parts store, or you can buy them at the BMW dealership, at either one. But that wire has to be replaced when you're doing a brake job that has already worn the indicator down. Okay, and now we have succeeded in removing both rotors, and you see they look pretty good. What we'll do is we'll check the thickness of them. These rotors have to be a minimum thickness, and if you'll notice on this rotor, somewhere, I have to find it, and I don't actually have it on it. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to look up the specifications for this rotor on Pro Demand, or our computer system, which is Mitchell on Demand or All Data, and we'll look this up and find out what the minimum thickness of this rotor is right here. And if it's, as long as it's not below this minimum thickness right here across where my two fingers are, we can turn this rotor. But if it's below this minimum thickness, we'll have to replace the rotor. So we'll check that first and see what it is.